So it has been 2 years since I bought the Graco Ultra Quickshot, and in this video I'm going to be sharing some of my honest feedback over the last 2 years, some struggles that I've had with the gun, answer some frequently asked questions, and also do a couple of demos that are tied to those frequently asked questions. Now, the previous video that I did on this, where I was actually spraying the Sherwin-Williams Gallery Series paint, it was also an opportunity for me to share just how truly good this machine can be. But the video has done very well and continues to do very well, and I think it's because this gun has actually started to gain quite a bit of excitement and popularity. I wanted to start the video with things that aren't perfect because I don't want the downsides to get lost in all of the positive, right? Literally every single problem I have had with this gun, which has not been a lot. I don't want it to make it sound like I just have problems with it all the time, because that's not the case. They've all been tip related. I'll talk about specifically what tips that I use when I get to the frequently asked questions part, because I do get that one a lot. But literally every single issue is a result of this. And both of the things I'm about to talk about are 100% self-imposed, meaning it is absolutely 100% my fault. Now, with airless tips, it is very different than using an HVLP, right? An HVLP, you can pull that pin out, you can clean everything around it, clean inside the gun. It's fairly easy to do, time consuming, right? And there's a lot more moving pieces, but it's a lot easier to manage that. With a airless tip, it's a little bit different because you do have some space inside of there, and you really need to make sure that you get this tip clean, otherwise it's going to clog. Now, what I'm about to show you, and the very first thing, backing up of the gun when I'm wanting to go shoot it. So I will show you that as I prime the gun to show you how this has been a recurring problem. So basically what I'm doing is when you're priming the gun, you're getting the material into the line so it's ready to be sprayed. But then when I go to turn it over to spray, it builds up and starts shooting out the end of the tip. And again, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to replicate this for you because I have a handful right here of tips that are all clogged. Now, because I said the tips are all clogged, the reason why I keep having this issue is because I don't do a good job cleaning the tip out. More importantly, one of the finishes that I spray primarily, which is a product called Renner 718, it is a 2K finish. I've done videos where I show this. That's what I typically use on white oak because it is basically a zero sheen. Therefore, it will make it look like there's no finish on your white oak, and it gives you that natural finish that everybody's looking for. And I'll leave a link to that video down in the video description if you guys want to check that out. What I've noticed is that when I use that particular product, I don't know if it's just the way that it settles. I don't know if it's the way that it cures. If I don't take the proper precautions in between coats, it builds up inside of the tip. And because the tips are so small, right? The orifice in this case is so small, it can make it very challenging to clean it out. Now, I have come up with a solution. I'm going to share that in this video, but that's the problem that I've been having. So I say all of that to say this: don't have that problem. Just make sure you clean the tip, and I'm going to share with you a very effective technique that I have come up with to ensure that that doesn't happen anymore. Now I want to get into the most commonly asked questions that I've received based off my previous video or anytime I'm talking to anybody about this spray system, and that is, what is the most common tip that you use? Like, if you could just pick one tip, what would it be? First, I would like to address the color of the tip. So Graco color codes, and I'm sure other companies do as well, but the type of tip that it is based on the color. So they have blue, yellow, green, I want to say they have black, but each one means something. The ones that I always use and only use in this gun, for the most part, just because of what I'm using it for, is the green, which is the FFLP, Fine Finish Low Pressure. The size that I like to use pretty much universally is a 310. Now, some would argue that that isn't the perfect tip for everything. However, with as much as I've used this system now over the past 2 years and dabbling with various sizes, 312, 308, 208, 108, 210, 412, using all these different sizes. In the previous video, I mentioned what the numbers actually mean. So if you want to figure all that out, definitely go watch the last video that I did on this, because it's going to give you a lot of information like that. But I actually find that the 310 has been kind of the sweet spot for both. There have been times that I have adjusted and gone with a 312 for maybe some paints, maybe some of the thicker paints, but for the most part, 310 is what I'm grabbing pretty much all the time. Question number 2 is, do I ever thin the material for this? And the answer is no. Never once have I actually thinned any material to include even the thicker paints. One of the huge benefits, in my opinion, to utilizing an airless spray system is there isn't a need to thin the material. Could there be benefits to thinning it? Sure, but you don't have to. Unlike HVLP, where if you're shooting the thicker paints, I mean, at a minimum, you probably want a 4-stage, maybe even a 5, to be able to get away with not thinning or thinning very little. With an airless, it is literally as easy as just like taking the material and pouring it in, or pouring it through whatever strainer and being able to get really good results. So to answer the question, no, there is no need to thin. I have not done tests to see if it provided me any value by thinning the material. What you want to adjust is the tip size and also the pressure that's coming out of the gun to get the perfect amount of material onto the surface. The next question I've gotten a lot since the previous video is, can you shoot oil-based finishes to it or through it, or things like stain and others? I don't know. I personally have not done it. I've literally only shot water-based products through my spray system. Biggest reason for that is because it just makes for a much simpler cleanup, and it also doesn't smell absolutely horrendous and terrible. So I can't really give you any advice on that. My assumption would be yes. The problem would be the cleaning. And really making sure that you clean it the proper way, because if you ended up using the wrong cleaner, depending on the product that you're using, it could end up being very, very bad for the internal portion of the lines. So for me, I use water-based pretty much for everything, and I've had wonderful results. The next question is, how is the battery life? So for those that don't know, these are powered by DeWalt batteries. Comes with, I think it came with 2 3-amp-hour batteries when I bought it. It's part of like a kit that you can get. I would assume that you can get it without the batteries, but I'm not 100% sure. So if you're already on the DeWalt platform, great. I'm sure that they make adapters now that you could utilize other batteries, but it comes with the 2 3-amp-hour DeWalt batteries. I can run off of a 3-amp-hour battery for basically an entire project, depending on the scale of the project. But I have yet to come into a scenario that the battery died while I was spraying. And a big part of that is I kind of pay attention to the battery life, but I don't feel like it draws that much power, so a 3-amp-hour battery is really good. I've also used the 4-amp-hour batteries. I've used the 5-amp-hour batteries. With the 3-amp-hour battery, it does sit flat on a surface. If you use the 5-amp-hour battery, it will tilt the system a little bit, but it does not affect the performance in any way. It just gives you longer time for you to use the system. The next question that I've gotten a lot is it okay to leave product in the gun in between coats, or do I need to empty it and clean it in between every coat? Yes, you can leave product in between coats. No, you do not have to clean it every single time in between coats. It also depends on the finish that you're using. If you're using a 2-part finish, a 2K, it always has a pot life, right? So once you mix it, you have X amount of time before the finish is no longer doing what it's supposed to do, and you need to change it out. That has been a scenario that I've run into, but I'm always spraying the second coat before I ever get to that pot life, basically. Now, one thing that I would recommend, and this is something that I've learned, and it has actually helped substantially when it came to the clogging of the tips and or the spitting issue, and that is actually removing the tip of the gun, the housing and the tip itself, and placing that in a bucket of water or a cup of water in between coats, because what that's allowing the finish to do is not to dry, is not to cure, right? It's keeping it wet. I even like to go one step further and put it in the water, pull it out, and hit it with some compressed air to blow anything out that might be in there that could dry, but then just leaving it in water in the meantime, because it's not allowing any finish inside of that tip to dry. Therefore, you just continuously keep getting really good results. And it only takes a second, right? Literally unscrew it, put it in the cup, blow it out with some compressed air, come back later, and you're good to go. Next question I get a lot is it difficult to clean? Which is really surprising that I get that question so much in the previous video, because I literally walk you through the steps on how to clean it in that video. So why they're asking me that question, I'm not sure. No, it's not. I'll do a quick little time lapse here showing the way that I clean it, but it's really quite easy. You know, you empty the remaining paint or the clear coat back into the original container, and then you just spray water through the system 1 or 2 times. Make sure that you get everything nice and clean, and it's good to go for the next time that you need it. Again, one of the big benefits to a water-based system. I'm often asked cleaning this versus an HVLP. I absolutely loathe cleaning an HVLP, but I will clean this and stay on top of it literally every single time I use it, because it takes a matter of a few minutes, and I'm able to quickly clean it and move on to the next thing. And the last question I've been getting a lot, and I don't really understand why so many people would be confused about this, and it's, is it only good for clear coats or can you use it for paints? Well, any finished system out there, you can absolutely spray both. I don't think that there's one that is designated just for one of the two. So yes, and in this video I'm gonna show you, because I'm actually gonna do a demo where I'm about to spray some clear finish on this white oak panel, just as a demonstration, just to kind of get a feel for what kind of results you can get, and then go through some of the things that I talked about in this video to actually show you some of these tips and tricks in between coats or changing over from one to the other, and just how easy it is to do. So I'll go from shooting a clear coat to shooting a black finish on some MDF, and do it all right here in my shop. Now the finish I'm going to use in this is just some leftover finish in a very small amount, simply because I'm not shooting a big panel and also don't want to go to the trouble of mixing just for this video. But this is just some general finishes flat. While I'm opening this up, one thing I will say about this finish, if you're looking for something that is going to give you a very natural look, this is a great option, because it is flat, which means it has very little to no sheen. So this will actually give you a very natural look. I will say that this does have a tendency to look a little bit plasticky as you build the coats, even though, but it just has a little bit more of a white finished tint to it. But it's just for a demo. So I'm gonna pour it in with the strainer. Whatever I don't use, I can just put it back into the can. But we're just waiting for all that to drip all the way through, make sure it's gotten rid of any imperfections and impurities, which in this case it has. This isn't completely necessary, especially since I said it does have a filter built into it. However, these are so inexpensive to get a box of those, you might as well just use it. Go ahead and put the lid on. Now, I want to make sure the top is open. I did mention that I was going to try to replicate the issue of it backing up. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take one of my tips that I know is clogged, and I'm going to place that in there just like that. And we can go ahead and prime this finish to get it ready to shoot. So to prime this, we just put it in the prime position, squeeze the trigger, hold it for about 7 to 10 seconds. So now I can adjust the gun to the spray position, squeeze the trigger, and this is what I was trying to replicate. So right now, that should not be happening. The reason that's happening is because there's built-up pressure. Why is there built-up pressure? Because the tip is clogged. So if I turn this around, it's releasing all of that pressure now. So that tip is no good. And that's the issue that I've had when I don't take the 2 seconds to make sure that I clean the tip very well, or don't leave it overnight and let any kind of finish dry inside of there. So now let's actually put the regular tip in, and I'll show you how it sprays. Okay, I put the unclogged tip in, spray the trigger, and we got a perfect spray pattern. I'm gonna get ready to paint this, but something that I don't know if I've ever shown this before, but if you don't have a Lazy Susan, you don't need like super fancy one. This is literally just 2 pieces of plywood, 1/2 inch scrap for the base, 3/4 inch for the top. Lazy Susan in the middle cost a couple of dollars on Amazon. And then basically they've just become attached to it over time, but they prop it up and give you the ability to paint. It really does make painting parts very nice because you have the ability to move it around. So huge recommendation for anybody that's doing a lot of batch work for finishing. Definitely consider one of these because you don't have to go around all the time. You can kind of just turn it however you want and apply the finish however you need to apply it. So I digress. When I'm doing this, I'm just doing overlapping coverage. Overlap by about half every time. Hold it about 10 to 12 inches away. Sometimes I get a little bit closer. This goes back to the tip. So a 310 tip is going to have a 6-inch fan pattern when you're holding it about 12 inches away. So that's how you can always just take the first number, multiply that by 2. I think a 6-inch pattern is really good for most applications, which is why I like the 300 series. So just test it out over here. Go ahead and get a couple of passes back and forth, and I'll show you the quality. And you can always tell and see your overlap pattern because you'll see the areas that you had the overlap on. Now, what's a lot of people do is they'll turn this, and then if you want to apply, have a thicker coat or just get real even coverage. I don't know just how clearly you're going to be able to see this on camera here, but we have a nice, this is probably a little bit thicker than I would typically go for a initial coat, just because I sprayed the crosshatch pattern and moved at the speed that I did. But either way, one of the huge benefits to a good finish is the leveling capabilities. And so if I was to take you and pan you across this is a common misconception that I see a lot of people have when they're like, oh, it looked all orange peeled or whatever. And it's like, the finish is still wet. You have to give it an opportunity to dry. And the better the flattening agents that are in that finish, all of that's irrelevant. So what you're actually seeing now, I'm going to move it slowly just in case you can catch glimpses of this in the light. What appears to be like bumps and imperfections, so it's actually not. What it's doing is those are the areas where it's basically going down into the grain. And one thing that's really nice about this finish or the Renner, and what makes it so natural is depending on how many coats you do, it doesn't actually completely fill in all of the imperfections and gaps. So when you run your hand over it, it feels like raw wood. And so really nice coat came out on that first one. We'll let this one sit. We'll let it dry. We'll come back and check what it looks like once it's dry. For the purpose of this video, I'm only going to do one coat. Typically, I would do 2. However, because I want to switch this thing over and actually spray something with paint, then we'll just leave it with the 1 coat. So I actually want to expand on that just a little bit, and that's really just to remind everybody that you really need to understand the finish that you're using, and the way you understand it is by testing it, right? A few years ago, I probably would have looked at this and gone, oh my God, I screwed up. I need to do something. I'm going to spray more finish on it to try to get it. But now that I've done this so many times and I've used this finish and other finishes so many times and used this material, which is also an incredibly important part of that, you know what it's going to do. Like you understand what's going to happen. You understand that you need to give it time to flatten out and everything. And I just want to bring that up because you might see it today when I do the paint, but the last time I did the video and I fired the gallery series from Sherwin-Williams, in the video I got a lot of comments of people are like, oh, look at that, looks like crap, it's all orange peeled. It's like, I just sprayed the material out of the gun. It looks the way that it does right now because it's wet, but I also understand that this has flattening agents in it, like every other finish does, and some are much better than others. General Finish is one of those that is much better than others. So I knew what it was going to do, and when it dried, it was beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, smooth finish. Just comes with time. I always urge people to test things out. The size tip that you're using matters. The type of material you're using, the sheen of the material matters. The material prep, the type of material that you're using, in this instance with the white oak, and it having all of those pores and cracks that finish can go down into it. And it would make you think by looking at it that, oh my gosh, I didn't clean off the surface and there's all kinds of little dust nibs and stuff like that. That's not the case, right? It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. My biggest recommendation, find the spray system that you like, whether it's this or something else, and test out the finishes that you want to use on different materials at different spray settings and different tip sizes, and see how it reacts. So now let me show you what I do in between coats to combat the problem that I just recreated for you. Now this is really simple and I don't need to spend a lot of time. So this right here was the tip that was already clogged, okay? So that's obviously no good. And there are ways I can fix this. For any tips that you get clogged, if you were to just take these and put them in a cup like this of acetone, paint thinner, something like that, and let them sit for a good while and break up that material, and then go back and clean it, the tips are fine. That's why I haven't thrown these away. They're not ruined. But what I like to do in between coats, remove this whole tip here. Now this is obviously while the finish is still wet, because I don't want that to dry in there. So you can see the finish here. You can even just take that, dip it in the water and get some of that off. We'll clean that off in just a moment. But then I just take this tip out, put that in there, put this in here, splash it around a little bit. I'll show you what I do to take it even one step further. Taking the tip out, putting it in the water. Again, this is a water-based finish, so it will solve the issue of something drying inside of there in between coats. I'll take compressed air and just hit it real quick from both sides. I'll dip it back in the water one time, make sure I get everything out. And then what I'm going to be doing is, you know, I should be able to see through this, right? There's a hole on the back side where the material enters in and it comes out the front and applies the finish. So I should be able to hold this up to the light and see that hole, and I absolutely can. So I know with 100% certainty that this is not going to be clogged and it will be ready to go when I come back and use it. So never have to worry about, you know, damaging a tip. If you leave it in the gun, depending on the finish, and you don't do this, you absolutely could come back out, stuff has already started to dry, and you could have a real problem. And that's where having to replace the tip or let them soak in a solvent in order to break that stuff up and then go through that whole process. So my recommendation, try this. I have not had the issue since doing this. It doesn't take me any longer to do. It's good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this out. I'm going to put some paint in it, and we're going to spray a sheet of MDF with a dark colored paint just to show you, yes, you can absolutely do both, and you can switch from one to the other without any problems. I'm ready to put some of this paint. This is Gallery Series by Sherwin-Williams. I got it to try it out, and I used it on a project. Really good stuff. I don't know if you can see the board here. It's just a small piece of scrap MDF that I'm going to be using. They say that you don't need to use primer for this. I personally have gotten better results using a primer. I don't buy into the hype of paint plus primer. I've always had better results with a primer, so just keep that in mind. But what I want to point out is you saw me go through the cleaning process real quick, just with a little bit of water. So we're just going to pour a little bit of this paint. We don't need much for this. Again, I'm not thinning it. I'm just straining it. And if I put too much, really doesn't matter because I can just empty it all right back into the can, just like you saw me do with the clear coat. But it's incredibly important, especially on an old paint can like that, to definitely want to use the strainer. Because just opening this top, a bunch of little pieces, chips fell off, and you obviously don't want that to clog up the tip of your gun and just create a lot of problems. So I've come to be a very big fan of using these strainers for sure, because it has saved me a lot of headaches again, and it's such an inexpensive, expendable thing that you can get for your shop. So, okay, I'm primed, I'm ready to go. I'm using the same tip. I did not thin anything in the paint, and we are not gonna do a primer just for the purposes of the video. It's more of just a demonstration, but I'm ready to go. Gonna shoot a little test. Looks like everything is going real well. I will say, I have a tendency to be around 5 on the pressure, maybe slightly under with paint, and I'm in between 5 and 6 with clear coats, just a personal preference. And, you know, with the thickness, but let's go ahead and get some paint on here. So that right there was a pressure buildup, which I'm gonna have to remedy. Luckily, it happened off of the material. So this is the other thing I was telling you about. Sometimes something can get stuck. I've also actually noticed that sometimes I feel like I over tighten this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna tighten it too tight. I did have it pretty tight. So what I've done is I've flipped the tip back around. I'm gonna go back over to the trash can and I'm gonna clear that real quick. To clear it, it's incredibly easy. You just flip the tip back the other way. And I'm pretty sure it just cleared whatever was in there because now it's spraying as normal. I'm gonna turn that tip back around. I'm gonna do a quick test spray. And it looks like everything is good to go. All right, right back to it. Let's do a quick little crosshatch. Now I'm just going to spin this real slowly to see if you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. Keep in mind, this is with almost no surface preparation whatsoever, minus quickly blowing it off just for this video. But this is what I was talking about, where it looks like right now that it has that orange peel effect. But I'm going to let this sit until it dries, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's dry, and you'll see that it is a really, really nice, clean finish. And it would be even better if you go through the process of priming it, which is why I always think that priming the material, regardless of what a manufacturer tells you, is the much, much better option. The first one is how I feel the performance of this spray system has been over those 2 years. If I had to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, honestly, I would be at a 9. There have been a couple of things, a couple of times where, you know, you get stuff like the tip's not seated just right, or it's over tightened and it builds up pressure, and like you saw in the video when I had the spitting, which again, I'm so happy that that happened in the video because I talked about it being a problem of mine and I wanted to be able to show you exactly what I do when something like that happens. But overall, outside of that, like, I know that I can go to this spray system for pretty much everything that I need it for, and within a couple of minutes I can be filled up and spraying finish and knowing I'm gonna get amazing results. So 9 out of 10 in terms of performance over the past 2 years. The next one is ease of use. I mean, you saw in the video just how simple it is to load it, to prime it, to spray it, to clean it. And again, if you want to get like a little bit more detailed on how I actually go about cleaning it step by step, then make sure you check out that old video. But in terms of ease of use, I've never used a spray system that is easier to use than this. So much so that if I only had one door to do, or one drawer, or one piece of material, I would actually go to the few extra minutes to get this thing up and running in order to utilize it on that project. So ease of use, personally, I'm gonna go a 10 out of 10 because that's probably one of my favorite things about it, is that it's so compact, it's so easy to get going that I'll reach for it no matter what the case is. Now, to be fair, if I'm gonna talk about ease of use, I do have to make it very clear that this is not the best thing for every project. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I was spraying the walls of my shop. I certainly would not want to use this system, right? Because it holds 32 ounces, I believe, of finish. You'd go through that pretty quick and you'd be refilling it all of the time. That's always been a downside to the DIY user-friendly cup style guns that you get from, any of the big box stores that have, the 32 ounce cup that you fill up. For big stuff, it's not great, right? If I was gonna spray the walls in my shop, I'd use like an X5 or something bigger that sucks out of a 5-gallon bucket. Very different application. With that being said, could you use this? Yes, but it wouldn't rate really high on ease of use because you'd always be refilling it. So the next thing I want to talk about is the value versus price. The big sticking point on this system is the price. This cost $1,450. When I bought mine, I paid $1,275. I got it at a Sherwin-Williams demo. It was right after it came out, and they were running some special, and I got like 2 free tips, or I got a certificate for 2 or 3 extra free tips. So, value-wise, it was pretty good. However, that's still really expensive for what this is. People get caught up on the size. They're like, how could something that small be that expensive? Like, the size has nothing to do with it, right? Why would I spend that much money on that machine when I can get a Graco X5 for $300? Well, an X5 is a very different spray system that the requirements for you to be able to utilize it wouldn't be great for small projects. If you were shooting a lot of material, it'd be fine, but that's a much larger scale system. What really separates this from some of the other options out there is the fact that it has different technology and electronics in the gun, which makes the gun much more reliable. That has been my experience so far. I very rarely get what you saw today. It does happen. But again, typically it is an issue with the tip. So as soon as you can start to dial in those issues, it's really not even a problem. But people have a really hard time with the price. What I would tell you, anytime you don't enjoy doing something because of the process, anytime you are not getting the results that you want, anytime you're having a slowdown in a particular task, then you should invest money in that to solve one of those problems. So hopefully you found this video helpful in determining whether or not this is right for you. I will leave links to all of this stuff down in the video description that I talked about. If you guys choose to buy one, great. If not, hopefully you got value out of this video. And until next time, see you in the next video.